you must have the Istriwala phenomenon, right? In the suburbs of Delhi, you'll find an Istriwala. He's got a cart that looks like it was designed in the 16th century. On it rests a coal-fired steam iron that was designed in the 17th century. But in his pocket, he'll have a 21st century mobile phone. Because as you know, most calling plans are free for incoming calls, and it costs him nothing to get apartments in the neighborhood and homes telling him that come and pick up a sari or a shirt or whatever to iron. Look, I was in Kerala, in my constituency in Thiruvananthapuram, and the farm, the country farm of a friend of mine, about 20 kilometers away from the capital city. And it was a hot day, a lot of coconut trees around. So he said, hey, would you like to drink some fresh coconut water? Which, as you know, is the most refreshing and nutritious thing you can drink on a hot day in our country. So I said, sure. And he whipped out his mobile phone, dialed a number, and a voice said, I'm up here. And right on top of the nearest coconut tree, with his lungi around his knees, a hatchet in one hand and a mobile phone. Fishermen now are taking mobile phones out to sea. They catch their fish, and as they come back near the coast, they dial all the market towns along the coast to see where they'll get the best price for the fish they've caught. Farmers, I mean, I'm sure this is happening in Madhya Pradesh. A farmer in the old days, just 10 years ago, 12 years ago, what do? They'd do the harvest, then they'd go, or they'd send an able-bodied male relative, could be a 10-year-old boy, on an 8, 10, 12-kilometer hike to the nearest market town in the hot sun, walking all the way, probably barefoot. The fellow would find out if the market was open, whether he could sell the crop he'd harvested, what price that crop would fetch, what the competition was. Then he would trudge back, again 8, 10, 12 kilometers in the hot sun, barefoot, to the farm. They would then load the cart, and they would go off to the market. Half a day's back-breaking labor, which is now solved and eliminated with just 1 2-minute phone call. See, that is the transformation of India. It's the empowerment of the ordinary Indian. That is the way in which we can provide meaningful change and positive direction in turbulent times. And I mention all of this because, frankly, there's no point giving you all a very theoretical speech about all of this. And I'm very conscious, by the way, I often say to foreign audiences that the old joke about India is anything I can tell you about India, the opposite is also true. But when I say the opposite is also true, I mean you should learn to understand and accept the India of paradoxes. An India where our IT experts are striding confidently forward into the 21st century, but where our population, many parts of our population, lives in each of the 20 other centuries. That is also part of what India is. In fact, the image is best captured by a photo that went around the internet, so the young people here may have seen it, during the time of the last Kumbh Mela. Some of you may have seen this picture. It's a picture of a classic sort of, Hindu sadhu, a naked holy man, matted hair, scraggly beard, warts on his face, his skin hanging in folds from his bony limbs, Rudraksha mala around his neck. I mean, really, your sort of absolute cliched image of the naked Hindu holy man, the timeless otherworldliness of the sage. But in this picture that went around the internet, this guy is chatting away on a mobile phone. And that is ultimately the reconciling of opposites that we have to live with in India. And there's a lot happening. If there is one area that we can talk about leadership, it's probably in the area of frugal innovation, something which India is turning out to be very good at. Our companies have, we all know about Jugaad, of course, but beyond Jugaad, the invention of sophisticated electrocardiogram machines that are 1/6 the price of foreign ones, or the Tata Nano, which meets all European emission standards. I know it's been a marketing disaster in India, but globally, it's seen as an absolute reflection of frugal innovation, whereby stripping out the inessentials, by re-engineering processes, India's been able to make a car that's 5 times cheaper than the nearest competitor of equivalent size and quality. Or, for that matter, of interest to the young students here, is the low-cost handheld computer that Kapil Sibal unveiled a couple of months ago, which is going to cost only 2,250 rupees. And as the rupee goes down, that's barely $45 now. This is Akash. It has a resistive 7-inch touchscreen like the Apple iPad. It comes in a rugged plastic casing, far tougher than the iPads. It has 2 gigabytes of flash memory. Unlike the iPad, better than the iPad, it has 2 USB ports. And of course, it has Wi-Fi capability. It uses the Android 2.2 operating system. and it consumes a meager 2 watts of power, which can be supplied by an internal battery that could be charged using a solar powered charger. So you can use it even in places where you have power cuts. And as you know, for students, and the students in this hall will know, the government is willing to subsidize 50% of the cost. So you'll basically have, for 20 American dollars, you'll have your own tablet in your hands. That, I think, is where India can lead in the world, and it's going to transform. If we can manufacture this, sustain the quality, and get it used, we can transform the way in which people even think about handheld computing. The important thing here is that we are becoming a player in globalization, not just a subject in it. That our ability to improvise on a shoestring, to come up with creative solutions, is extremely important, but it's not just at the low end. The same Tata Motors that makes the Nano has also bought the Jaguar, which is the favored car of British ambassadors around the world. So I always love telling British ambassadors that I meet that they're driving around in an Indian car now. You know, it sends a post-colonial frisson through me. But actually, I'll give you a better example of that phenomenon. Was when Jamshedji Tata, back 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago, was trying to set up India's first steel plant in the teeth of British hostility and opposition. A British official of the day snootily remarked that he would be willing to eat every ounce of steel that an Indian was capable of producing. It's a pity he didn't live long enough to see the descendants of Jamshedji Tata acquire the remnants of British steel when they bought Chorus in Europe. Might have given him a very bad case of indigestion. But I don't want to get complacent. I was told you didn't want me to sound like a politician, so I'm not sounding like a politician, but I do want to remind you there are still huge problems we have to overcome. And I'm not going to just talk about the poverty line and starvation and hunger and farmer suicides, though it is staggering that the country has the record. And what I wanted to say very simply is that I will go into it in the Q&A if it interests you, but what worries me is that we mustn't act as if we are an emerging market, but a submerging polity. We have to tackle these challenges and we have to overcome them. And we have to use our democracy effectively to do that. And to me, to use more modern metaphors, we need to tackle both the hardware and the software of development. The hardware are the ports, the airports, the roads, the railways, the basically creaking infrastructure in our country today, which has been neglected for too long by successive governments. No one can be excused or be exempt from blame. We need to get that right. But equally, and perhaps even more important, we have to get right the software of development, by which I mean education, training, sanitation, healthcare. I mean, you know, we talk about a demographic dividend. 65% of our population is under 35. I think Sachin yesterday gave you similar numbers. And that means that for the next 30 years, India should have a youthful, dynamic, and productive working population at a time when the rest of the world, including China, is aging. And we could be the engine of the world. But we can only do that if our young people growing up into this, first of all, have an economy which will offer them jobs they can do and they can fit into it. And second, if they have an education or training to be able to fulfill what's available in that economy. You know that we have 72% of kids in government schools dropping out by the 8th grade. Are they going to be able to cope with the demands of a 21st century economy? We have so many kids who've never seen the inside of a school. How are they going to cope? And then what can we do about a country where there are so many people and yet there's a shortage of masons and plumbers and carpenters because our vocational training is so pathetic and so lacking? These are all things we need to address as well before we can speak in meaningful terms of world leadership.